How we doing, folks? Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you for joining me again. Now, I have been a Trump supporter going all the way back to 2015. OG Trump supporter, never wavered, even on January 6th when there was all those shenanigans. So I've always been in Trump's corner. However, I do have to admit, these last few months, it has been a little more difficult to be a Trump supporter. And in my opinion, it all goes back to when he went on X and said that if you support or are pushing for the release of the Epstein files, you are falling for a Democrat hoax and you are not MAGA. And when he said that, a lot of us were very perplexed because almost every prominent Republican had been screaming for the release of the Epstein files, including Donald Trump Jr. And then just like that, he says these files are unimportant and they are part of a Democrat hoax. And ever since then, it's been a little weird. And I think what it comes down to is when he said that, that was the start of that growing rift between the two factions on the right, the America First faction and the Zionist faction, because the Epstein files, as we know, probably have things in it, if it's not redacted or scrubbed or removed, that involve Israel. And it was very suspicious when the neocons like Shapiro and Levin were like, these Epstein files, they're not that important. They're very low priority. Time for us to move on. That was a tell right there that Israel was somehow involved. And ever since then, it's been really weird. And this split in the party has just become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what we're fighting over right now for 2028. Which faction is going to win? Well, if we look at who has the truth on their side, it is the America First side. Trying to explain why you have to support a foreign government, it's not an easy sell. And ultimately, it's you can't really defend that position, that you have to support a foreign government to be a good American. That's a losing position. And that being the case, what I have noticed is that this Zionist side, they're really cranking up the conflict, not just within the United States, but across the world. They are in a state of war to defend themselves. And they are trying to distract. They are trying to point the public in certain directions. They are scratching and clawing because they cannot ultimately defend their positions. And any political faction, when they're struggling, when their back's against the wall, they always turn to a warlike attitude to defend themselves. So this is really not unexpected, but that's what I want to focus on in this video, what they are doing right now in order to get the spotlight off themselves as more and more Americans, especially those on the right, become skeptical of our relationship with Israel. And what they've been doing really for several months now is ramping up this focus on Islam and Muslims and hating Muslims. So we have Mamdani in New York, a radical progressive democratic socialist who has some pretty crazy ideas. However, instead of really focusing just on those political issues that pertain to New York and how he's going to govern, he instead, or the Zionists instead, have just been screaming, Muslim, Muslim, Muslim at the top of their lungs. He's a Muslim. Of course, if we were to scream that he was Jewish, that would be considered bigoted and anti-Semitic. But apparently, you can do it with Muslims, and it's okay. So there's a clear double standard here. And the funny thing is, Mamdani is really only a Muslim in name only. For Christ's sakes, he actually supports trans health care for kids. So how Muslim is that, per se, if he's supporting that? So is it really relevant that he is Muslim? No. He's just a New York radical progressive, just like there are a lot of other radical progressives in New York. His religion is meaningless. However, that has been the focus of the Zionist side. You're not supposed to like Muslims. And with this recent shooting of these two National Guardsmen by this Afghan national, the cries are getting louder. Are you familiar with Laura Loomer, a crazy lunatic Zionist who has over 1 million followers on X? She has press credentials at the Pentagon and some influence in the Trump administration. And she wrote this on X. She said, I don't think people realize what has happened. We are officially at war with Islam. Islam declared war on U.S. service members on U.S. soil. Secretary of War should respond by ordering military-style raids on every single mosque in America in a joint operation with DHS to mass deport every single non-citizen Muslim in our country. Wow. So this one shooting, and we are at war with Islam. But are we really? So obviously, they're still investigating this shooting, but it turns out that this guy was working with the CIA back in Afghanistan and came in under Biden. And it's always suspicious when we have these shootings and the person, it always turns out, was on the radar of our intelligence services. Just by chance, he used to work with the CIA. Now, I'm not implying any conspiracy here. I just find that to be interesting. And to claim that you're at war with an entire religion based off of one guy who might just be a nutcase is ridiculous. However, that is a popular slogan on the Zionist side. A lot of people are backing her up, saying that we are, in fact, at war with Islam. Anything to distract from Israel. Focus on the Muslims. Don't focus on Israel bombing Gaza. Don't do that. It's the bad guys are the Muslims. And another tactic we've seen is this focus on Qatari money. Apparently, this tiny country has infiltrated the United States, our universities, our pundit class, and people like Tucker Carlson are secretly working for the Qataris and taking their money to defend Sharia law and Islam. Ooh, how dare he? Of course, he's not doing that, but you hear a lot of that online. So we're at war with Islam in the United States, and we're at war with these countries in the Middle East, these Muslim countries, Islamic countries, who are trying to infiltrate our politics. Again, just a distraction from the people who actually have infiltrated our politics and are controlling our government. Hint, it's not Qatar. So the more the Zionist side gets exposed, the louder they get. And we need to really understand this, because they will only continue to get more desperate. And again, what do you always fall back on? You fall back on war. And the war they're pushing now is one with Venezuela for some reason. And to be clear, it's not just the Zionists. It's also neocons who are just obsessed with South America, like Rubio, for personal reasons, I think. But all of a sudden, we have this war with Venezuela that just sort of came out of nowhere. 6 months ago, were you thinking about Venezuela? Were you driving to work going, oh man, Maduro and Venezuela are a real problem. I hope we do something about Venezuela. No. It's manufactured. All of a sudden, you start seeing all these articles in the mainstream media. People like Lindsey Graham are all of a sudden talking about Venezuela and how evil Maduro is. And Ben Shapiro is saying, I don't give a crap if they're anti-abortion and very socially conservative. Maduro's a dictator. Who cares about him? Just came out of nowhere, really. Manufactured. It happens over and over and over again. They manufacture these things. And all of a sudden, we're supposed to care about Venezuela and go to war with Venezuela. They never stop. It's always regime change. And my buddy, my favorite guy, Mark Levin, at it again on X, advocating for regime change in Russia, in Iran. He never stops. Check this out. I got to pull it up because it's interesting. It just makes me laugh, and it's so ridiculous. Mark Levin. If Ukraine acquired the offensive weapons needed to hammer Russia, it would force Russia to the table, and Putin would eventually be overthrown. Putin is a disastrous, failed military leader and ruthless ex-KGB assassin. Okay, so Russia right now, they're actually advancing faster, winning this war of attrition. But Mark Levin is still convinced that if we just give them some more weapons, it will cause the collapse of the Russian government. And who has been saying that from the start? That was always the goal. It was never about Ukraine and democracy. If you still buy that, my God, it's never about democracy and freedom. It's about geopolitics, and Russia is a thorn in our side, or at least the side of the people in Washington, D.C. who hate them. So they wanted this war so that we could throw sanctions on, cause the regime to become destabilized, collapse, and then Russia gets, as a few of them have suggested, split up into different countries, and now Russia is neutered. It no longer exists as a superpower. That was always the goal. And here Mark Levin, November 2025, still talking about regime change in Russia. If you actually listen to these lunatics, they will tell you the truth. You just got to pay attention. And of course, it's not just Russia with Levin, it's also Iran. Here's him screaming about Iran. The Iranian regime must be destroyed. I'll say it out loud again. The Iranian terrorist regime must be destroyed. Nuclear weapons are a horrific byproduct of their genocidal bloodlust and killing fields ideology. The evil is the regime itself. The regime is on its back, desperate for a lifeline. It must be eliminated. If our country chooses otherwise, then so be it. I believe history will view it as a huge mistake. Then the Israelis must finish them off without restraints from us. This guy's a nut job. So if we don't do it, we have to let the Israelis do it. But which, by the way, they can't do it by themselves, which is why they try to drag us in. So he wants to go to war with Russia or try to destabilize Russia through Ukraine. He wants to overthrow Iran. Why did we listen to these people? I don't know. But again, he's a neocon and a Zionist, and he is in a war setting or war mindset. He's at war. At home, overseas, Mark Levin and people like him are at war. And they want to get you into the same mindset to take you away or to distract you from actually, from looking at Israel, from their influence. They want to point you in the other direction. And I hope you don't fall for that. So that brings me to these, the question, who is our enemy? Is it Venezuela, Russia, China, Iran, the Islamo-Nazi Marxist fascists that live in our country, Muslims generally? Well, in my opinion, the enemy is people who are not America first in our own country. Those who would put a foreign nation on equal standing with our country, who would demand that we support a foreign country if we want to be good Americans. Those are my actual enemies because they're not America first. And they are impeding us from actually improving our country. So while they want to tell us that the enemy is all these other countries, these Muslims, the progressives, the socialists, no. If you are an American citizen, if you put America first, we can disagree on economics, on social policy. We can disagree on all of that vehemently, and I will. But you're not my enemy. You're my neighbor. You're my family member, my friend, my coworker. You are not my enemy. And people who insist that you are because you don't support a certain country in the Middle East, or because you don't enthusiastically attack Muslims or Islam, they are the actual enemy. And until we handle that, until we get our sovereignty back, that's where the real fight is. Not with your brother, not with your family member, not with your coworker or friend. It's with people who have hijacked our political process because they are loyal to another country, not America. So that is the enemy we're fighting, not each other. And I am willing to work with anybody who puts America first, despite our differences, in an effort to improve this country. That's where I'm at now, because 20 years, 25 years of neoconservatism, it's been a disaster. It's bankrupted us. War after war, constant state of attacking people, countries, and religions. I'm done with that. I hope you are too. So 2028, our side, the America First side, we have to win. It's now or never. The Overton window has opened up a bit, and now we have the opportunity to fight back, to wrestle control back of our country, and actually elect people who are America First. Well, that is it for now. If you are new to my channel, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.